Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of our course on the ascending spiral of wakefulness. Okay, let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. O great masters, help us in our quest to realize Thee and to realize ourselves as a tiny spark of Thee. Om. Peace. Amen. And let's invoke the presence of the masters and the warriors for the upward battle.
Let's stand.
Yeah, you can't do this passively. So I will try to follow the sage advice of how to give a good talk, which is a good talk needs a good beginning, a strong beginning, and a strong ending, and those two should be as close together as possible. So, we're going to talk about directional development, and I'll begin by reading the shloka for those of you who are eyesight challenged, the way that many of us are. The shloka is from chapter 18, and it says, "Each one, attentive to his own duty, men rise toward the highest success. Hear now how, by devotedly pursuing your own duty, one may rise toward that final end. One attains perfection by offering his own special gifts up to Him, out of whom all beings were manifested, and by whom the whole universe is permeated. Evolution is a spiral stairway. For each individual, there are steps that lead upward and those that lead downward, things that expand our consciousness and those that contract us. We evolve through 4 distinct stages: heavy, ego-active but contractive, ego-active and expansive, and light." So we're going to go into these concepts much more in depth in directional development. Directional development is really important to understand, because without it, there's no way to navigate. You know, you read some of the philosophy, especially of modern times, the existentialists, and there's this sense that everything is equal. As long as you do what you feel to do, that's as much. There's no real purpose to existence. Existence just is. And so within that kind of a philosophy, how do you navigate? What's better? What's worse? Everybody is vying for our attention to say that what I'm doing is right, what the others are doing is wrong. If you listen to me, you're going to be successful. Now you've got everybody from low-minded people to high-minded people trying to sell you with their ideas and their agenda. So how do we sort all of that out? Without some sort of a compass, we're like sailors in the early years out in the ocean who, once the fog hit and they didn't have stars or the sun, they were completely lost. We need a moral compass. And the moral compass is the fact that there is, in fact, directional development. There's an evolutionary process, not just on the physical plane, which is widely accepted, but also on a mental plane, which is also widely accepted. But there's a directional evolutionary process on the spiritual plane. And just as we commonly accept that a man is more evolved than a maggot, the differences between different consciousnesses have an evolutionary direction to them. So these, in the Gita, there is quite a lot of teaching about the three gunas. These are the Swami called them the eternal wanderers. These are kind of vibrational aspects of consciousness. And Master said that our consciousness, we don't create our thoughts. We pick up our thoughts according to the level of consciousness that we're on. That's a really important thing to understand, because according to where you've got your dial, whether it's at the low part of the spectrum or the high part of the spectrum, just like your radio, at that low part, you're going to get stations that pull the consciousness down. And at the high part, which most radios don't have in these days, you're going to get programming that pulls the consciousness up. So according to where we are vibrationally, we will tune in to those thoughts that pertain to that vibration. We think that we create those thoughts, but we don't. We perceive them, but we perceive them dimly through a foggy lens that's got its own coloration. Nonetheless, those thoughts are universally, not individually rooted. And according to where we are, we will pick up those thoughts. Now, all of creation depends upon the law of duality. Master described it this way, that if you look at a screen, if it's all white, you don't see a movie. If it's all black, you don't see a movie. There's got to be polarity in order for there to be a movie. There's got to be polarity in order for there to be a creation. And the way Lahiri Mahashaya describes that is that God is pure, unmoving bliss. And he takes a little part of his consciousness, Lahiri said 1%, and he puts that into motion. And that motion back and forth takes that unmoving, still prana, he called it, prana being intelligent energy. So he puts that into movement, and that movement back and forth is a polarity. So that polarity has a light and a dark to that spectrum. And so we are climbing up that spectrum from darker to lighter, from dimmer to brighter. And so those two poles are there. But with the gunas, there's a third one. So there's light, there's heavy, or light, or dark and light. And then if they're unmoving, there still isn't a movie, is there? Or there isn't a creation. So they've got to be put into motion. And that third, that energetic part, is called rajasic. And that raja is the activating quality. Now with the conscious mind, with consciousness, that activating energy can activate, but it can be pulled downward, or it can activate and be pulled upward. So it's pulled toward the lower pole or the upper pole. And in the Gita, it talks about four great stages of the development of the evolution of our consciousness. So In India, in the ancient scripture, this was the caste system. But the caste system has been terribly misused. And so in India, we don't use that terminology because the Indians have so much experience and therefore kind of buttons around that you mention caste and they tune out and they're thinking, oh, this is a terrible thing and so on. So we've got other language to avoid that difficulty, but that's the way it's presented in the Gita. So the tamas, Master called obstructing, or Swami called it heavy or morally handicapped. Tamas is that lowest pole which draws one down into a dim, barely aware consciousness, very sensual, very dark in the ability to follow any morality or any upward movement. The next stage up is Rajatama. So now that stuck energy has become activated, but it's activated in a downward direction which makes people selfish. And so the activating, obstructing energy is there, but it's self-centered. And then the next stage up is called Sattvatama, and that is that energy is activated, but it's activated in an upward direction. And that elevating, but still obstructing energy is there. But at that stage, we become truth-seeking. And finally, Sattva is the elevated energy, and at that, the high sage, his job is to share the truth. And so in the caste system, the lowest part is those people who don't have very much creativity. The next is typified as the merchant class, but think of that as a merchant that's selfish. It doesn't depend on occupation, and it certainly doesn't depend on birth. That's the problem with the misuse of the caste system. That we'll get into this, but the dominant people always try to suppress the less dominant as long as the energy is low. And so the caste system has been used as a means of suppression, not as a means of enlightenment. But think of a crafty, selfish, cheating merchant. Unfortunately, our age, these gunas apply not only to individuals, but they apply to the whole planet. We're in the lower part of the Rajatama cycle in terms of the evolution of the planet. It goes through a 24-year cycle. 24,000, thank you. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be spinning around. Thank you. So our age, so we have this sense, oh gosh, we've got the new iPhone or the new Samsung, so we're really advanced. Well, we're just barely crawling out of the darkness of tamas. And so that's why the morality, accepted morality that you see spread around, if you don't know the evolution of consciousness, and you listen to people, then the absolutely most important thing is to get rich, isn't it? Don't you want to be a billionaire? Don't you want to have power? Don't you want to have some yachts and a 15,000 square foot house? Don't you want all of that? That's what every magazine is telling us, basically, and TV shows. So right now, the moral compass is not very enlightened, and people, by and large, don't want to listen to enlightened. So the world we live in is an expression of the vibrational attunement, that dial, that the whole planet is in right now. Fortunately, even with a radio that's got a lot of those low stations, there are a few high stations, and you and I can choose to live in that high station. And Ananda is up there in probably just below the sattvic stage. There's enough activating energy to keep us moving, but you know, our envy is not for that 15,000 square foot house, but a nice cave up in the Himalayas. And not for the big, powerful position, but just to be able to meditate. Just be able to tune into God. That's the polarity, but we're working up toward it. So then Sattva-tama we'll come into that in the next stage, and Treta Yuga will come into that. And at that level, people generally will be seeking truth. At the high civilization, Satya Yuga, where everyone is sattvic, or the world is sattvic, people won't be seeking, they'll be living in truth. And so we've got this cycle that's going on for the planet, but the cycle that goes on for you and me is actually more important for us than the planetary cycle. Later on we can incarnate in higher ages, but we've got work to do in this one. So, Master created something called the psychological chart. He created this at the time, remember before he came to America, what he was doing? He was a school teacher in Ranchi. He had started a school. And so he created the psychological chart so that his teachers could observe the qualities of the students and be able to work with them so that they knew how to direct each student individually as in an upward moving direction. That same thing has been carried on in our EFL schools, Education for Life schools, where we work very carefully with every individual student, trying to see their qualities and see what the next step. So here are a few of the qualities that are pertaining to each of the 4 levels. And I'm not going to read through them. I just want you to get a sense of what that is. And this afternoon's homework assignment is going to be to work. This is just a portion of what Master gave of the general psychological chart, and it can be applied in different ways. But your assignment for this afternoon is to work with that psychological chart and to see where you are, what things are active in you, what elements, what tendencies. And Nitai, who's one of the heads of this school and has worked with EFL for a long time, told us a fascinating thing, and because many of us are teachers, this is very interesting. If we had everybody here fill out the psychological chart, so we could see, what was active, what was high, what was low, and so on. If we looked at that as a group, not just as an individual, but as a group, we could see what we all have to work on. We could see patterns in that. So yesterday, you were working with your individual battles. Today, you're going to be working with the flow of your overall evolutionary development. And that's important because if we can see where the flow is and where we are, then we can understand what the proper next step for us is. You can't jump from tamasic to sattvic because there's an intervening process that goes on. I mean, idealistically, you could. Lahiri Mahashaya was trying to enlighten an elephant, but I don't think it worked. And it doesn't seem to work for mankind. It's certainly not in large numbers. So let's go on and talk about the spiral staircase and specific gravity. Spiral stairway, I have used because Master's beautiful poem, God, 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 starts out, from the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, God, God, God. And then he goes on, as I break my fast, as I go to work, as I worry, when worries howl at me. I would really suggest that you learn that poem, because he's written on two levels. You can follow it as what happens as you go through your day and the proper way to face whatever's going on hour by hour. But also you can look at it as your evolutionary development and how to work with that. So imagine now a spiral stairway that goes up. And let's say that that spiral stairway has 10,000 steps on it. You might think like that's a lot, but in fact, I don't want to say the real number because it'll scare us all. We were with Swami in India, and we had in Darjeeling, we went by some school children who were all dressed up in their little uniforms, and they were all in line, and this teacher was marching them along the road. They were, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, and there were maybe 50 of them, and they were all proud and happy and clean. About 2 blocks later, we passed through a slum where same age children were just sitting in the gutter playing with whatever they could. And I mentioned to Swami, my goodness, how broad the spectrum is. And then thinking that I was clever and had figured out, because Master said that it takes 1,000,000 years of disease-free living in order to make the journey through this, up this spiral staircase. So I cleverly did the math on that and came up with the fact that it would take, I think, 30,000 lifetimes. I'm not sure what number I used, but let's say 30,000 lifetimes. So I said, look at that spectrum, and it takes 30,000 lifetimes to go through that. And Swami just kind of turned around and said, where did you get that tiny number? And so I cleverly explained, and he said, you weren't paying attention. Disease-free, harmonious. How many years of yours in this lifetime, and you're at a high level, are disease-free and harmonious. So anyway, let's go on. So imagine that spiral stairway coming up. And as you make this progress up through these 4 levels, you go up higher and higher on that spiral stairway. And so it sounds like a lot of effort, but let's imagine that we're floating up the stairs and we're at some level there. We're on some step. And that step that we're on, generally speaking, Swami called our specific gravity. And so our specific gravity is where we float in that spectrum from dark and heavy up to light and expansive. Just like a balloon, if you have a balloon and it's all shrunk, maybe all it is the rubber that might sink to the bottom of the ocean. Fill it with air and it rises up. And so as we expand, our specific gravity gets lighter and lighter, and we ascend up that spiral stairway. And so basically we work with that ascending current, because not everything is all darkness and lost. See, we're all extensions of the divine. And so we've all come from the most expansive state of consciousness, and our soul remembers that state. And so our soul is going to continue to prod us on that journey, on that ascension up the spiral stairway. So your job and my job is not to blame other people and condemn them for where they are. Their own soul is going to take care of that. Our job is whatever step we're on, we need to keep working on the ascending journey to move upward. Now, If it were only that simple, it would seem fairly easy. You know, you're going to climb a mountain, you know that the next step up is going to take you closer to the peak, and the paradigm is pretty simple. Now imagine that spiral stairway has a column in the center of it that supports it. And it's not just a single column, but that column has 6 aspects or 6 pillars to it. And so that those 6 pillars are like the energy, the vibrational energy of the different chakras that we have. So we can be on one step, but those columns of our chakras, or the issues that we're dealing with, they move up and down all the time. And it's not just 6 of them, there's lots and lots. That's what those warriors are that we were talking about yesterday. So you can be on a fairly high step, but maybe you're dealing with a relatively tamasic or rajotama element in certain aspects of your consciousness. And so we've all got different battles that we're fighting, and we're going to come to our particular dharma and karma in life, but we have a particular kind of set of battles that in any one lifetime we're going to take on. So here we are climbing up and we're dealing with different things. And so those energies, the bottom chakra, the energies, the vibrational energies, I don't want to go too much into the chakras because I want to concentrate on the vibration. But that energy is around survival and those issues that have to do with survival. In the animal kingdom, it's about how to find enough food to eat, how to stay safe from a predator, how to be able to nest, how to get through the winter, all of those survival issues. And it's a very, very, very powerful paradigm. Well, we still have those survival issues in our consciousness, and we have to deal with them. Now, ultimately, if those survival issues are really active in us, we may constantly worry about money or have a great fear of death. These things are due to what we've experienced in the past, the karmic tale that we've brought with us. But we might have some of those things quite active in our life and yet be quite enlightened in other ways. But if survival issues, money issues, possession issues are alive in you, just know that that's one of the things that you need to be working on in order to make the ascension. If they aren't, if you don't have those issues, then you say, what in the world are you talking about? It's all Divine Mother. She's taking care of us. What are you worrying about that stuff for? It's Divine Mother. And if you're there, then those issues aren't part of your consciousness. Okay, I don't want to spend too long. You're going to get the point quickly. So the second energy vibration is around reproduction and relationships. When the energy is going down, the energy gets more contractive when it's going up. So when the energy is going up, we're grounded and we're firm. When the energy goes up with the second chakra, we're flexible and we're creative. The lumbar center has the issues around power. So the 3 major forces in, one could say, creational energy, think of it in the animal kingdom, is survival, reproduction, and what they call the dominance hierarchy. All the way down to maggots, there's a dominance hierarchy. I was just reading scientists, now there are scientists that do this, believe it or not, but they were studying maggot behavior. So they got a pizza and they put like 10,000 maggots on that pizza. Now a maggot apparently, I just learned, can eat double its weight in a single day. So the maggots that were right there on top of the pizza, they ate double their weight, and then they just sat there blocking everybody else from getting. So maggots have evolved a mechanism to deal with that, and the other ones go underneath, and they come up from underneath, and it's called a maggot fountain. And so they push the fat ones up so they can get at the food. Nonetheless, coming back before we get too far out there, coming back, there is a very, very powerful instinct to get your territory and protect it, because if you can do that, it allows you to maintain those bottom two in a better manner. So you can survive and you can reproduce if you've got a good domain. And you see all through animal behavior this dynamic going on. We still have the tails of that. So if you're dealing with control issues and power issues, it's just part of nature, but it's something that we have to evolve out of. Those are the three materialistic chakras. As we go higher, we deal with more enlightened energies. So the heart has the feeling energy that can go to emotions, or it can go to love and devotion. Difference between an Italian saint and an Italian opera singer is one deals with emotions, the other deals with devotions. And so that's our paradigm. And so on. Cervical center has calmness, expansion, integrity, and the medulla is where our sense of self is. That's the center of ego. But if we can bring that energy from here to the spiritual eye, we go from ego consciousness to Christ consciousness. So, how do we move up in that movement? What are the tools? What do we need to do? So, be specific. We're going to have this exercise this afternoon. We need to understand where we are and where the specific gravities that each individually we need to work on. And then don't judge yourself or get overwhelmed with the battle. You only need to take the next step. It's just a step at a time. And besides that, ultimately it's all God's play. So align your individual will with God's will and sources of wisdom. Keep good company. Master said environment is more important than willpower. Distance yourself through non-attachment. Develop your intuition. Meditate and do your spiritual practices. And work with the appropriate next step in each situation. Because you can't jump too many steps. Now, we could honestly and will give a whole course just on directional development, but that isn't for this weekend course. We're having to zoom along. So let's do our affirmation. We're going to do our affirmation in a more powerful way. We've been hurrying through, but sometimes hurrying makes us not do things right. The power of the affirmation is according to how deeply we can bring that into both our subconscious, conscious, and most importantly, superconscious mind. So we're going to do it as we did yesterday, out loud, which helps get the energy going. Then normal speaking voice, then a whisper, then silently, but then we'll do it 2 more times, bringing the energy to the spiritual eye. The more powerfully you can put your energy into that, the more powerful the effect of an affirmation. It can actually change your consciousness. So let's close our eyes, and we'll do this affirmation together. I'll read it, you can repeat. I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments.
I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments.
What I do today
What I
will create a new and better future. Filled with inner joy. Now, normal speaking, but really concentrate on the essence of this. I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future. Filled with inner joy. Whispering, I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future, filled with inner joy. And now silently, but look into the spiritual eye and bring it into the superconsciousness. You can do it with me. I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future, filled with inner joy. I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future, filled with inner joy. And one last time, really bring it into the superconscious. What I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future, filled with inner joy.
So where have we been and where are we going? We started, the first gem of Ratna was the inner conflict. This is how the Gita begins, but symbolically, of course, it's helping us to understand that the spiritual path, in fact, all of life, is about a conflict of opposing forces, light and dark, heavy and light. And so we need to engage in the battle. And when Krishna exhorts Arjuna to fight the battle, it's not just about the battle of Kurukshetra. It's about the soul's battle to reclaim the soul's awareness. First gem. Second gem, then we go on to the imperishable soul, because Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna's hesitant to fight because he doesn't want to kill his relatives, the Kauravas, and he said, you don't understand. Nothing can be destroyed. It's all energy. And in fact, once Swami told us, as he was working on his Gita commentaries, Master's Gita commentaries, which he compiled, he said, Master said, this interpretation of the Gita could not have happened until at least Dwapara Yuga, where there is an understanding that matter is not the ultimate reality, but energy. It's one of the keynotes of Dwapara Yuga, is energy. And so to understand that the Gita is really talking about the battle on an energetic level. And so the imperishable soul, we can't die, but moreover, if we're really understanding that what we're trying to kill are negative aspects of our own consciousness, what Krishna is saying is that energy is never lost. All it is transmuted to a higher expression. And so don't be afraid. Go into battle. And then the next gem, Navratna, was self-offering, where once we begin to understand, I'm a part of something so much bigger than myself. I'm a part of a consciousness. Then we want to return to the source. We want to offer ourselves up to the source from which we came, because there's just as you see in Italy, they grow a lot of sunflowers, and they don't call them sunflowers in Italian. They call them girasole. Is that correct? And because it means turning to the sun. And it's so beautiful. You see this whole big field of sunflowers, and they just follow the sun all day long. And then they do it all over again. And so this is what our self-offering, where we are drawn to the light of God, and we keep moving towards it. And with the grace of the divine guides and the great teachings, we are able to draw closer to it. So that's what we covered yesterday. Then how does that continue with what we've been talking about today? Well, we begin with directional development to understand that there are stages and that there are things that we are, just as an army advances into enemy territory, not all of the different troops move forward as a unified whole. Some will rush forward and some will hold back. In fact, we're, maybe this will be dismaying to you, but we're great Lord of the Rings fans. And every year we do a marathon where we watch the extended version, you know, for a week every night. But we've read about how they made the movie, you know, all those battles with the millions of orcs and so forth, that's all computer graphics. But the men who did that computer graphics said it was very, very interesting. Talk about artificial intelligence, that they said once they started them in play with their programs, they began making their own choices. And some of the troops of orcs, which were just computer graphics, did not enter into the battle. They pulled back and went off to the side and kind of deserted. And they said, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so it is with moving forward directionally, that we don't move forward all at once. There are parts of us that say, I really, really want to fight this battle. And then there's another part that says, who are you kidding? And we just have to keep working. The who are you kidding part, you just kind of push them up a little bit and you say, okay, then at least do something good for somebody else, if you really can. Meditate deeply. You move forward as you can. And the parts that are really, really unified in the effort, they can move forward, and then it all eventually is, in the end, victory is achieved. So that's directional development. But then we come to the 3 points that we'll cover today. And just to give you an overview, we'll just go like this. The first one is karma. Next one will be Dharma and this morning, Dharma and right action. And then finally, knowing truth. So how do these tie in? It's important to get the overview. So we've just been talking about looking at directional development. What can we do? And then we say, well, karma is the plan, it's the mechanism through which we learn what works and what doesn't work. It's really as simple as that. I'll go through all of them and then we'll focus on karma. So if we're trying to see, well, how do we move forward here? Maybe I'll try this. And that's why, it's a brilliant scheme that God came up with, the law of karma, of cause and effect. I mean, if that didn't exist, we could, for example, put our hand on a hot stove and burn our hand really badly, and then the next day we think, oh, let's try that again. And that's, of course, allegorical for the mistakes we make. When we steal, when we lie, when we cheat, maybe in the short run we get away with it, but not in the long run. And so we'll talk about this more in detail. And then from karma, that law of cause and effect, the mechanism through which we learn how to live in this world and how to participate in the directional developmental flow, then Dharma. Karma needs to flow, needs to be guided by Dharma, which Swami also defined as truth in action, and then from that, knowing truth. Once we begin to live in this world in such a way that our actions are in alignment with truth, then we can say, wait a minute, I think there's something more than just acting in this world, even if it's well done, even if it's directionally development. Let me see what is behind the screen. We want to see, and it's not a little man behind the curtain like in Wizard of Oz. It's the light of God that is behind all of this. As Jyotish used the image of the movie duality, and light and dark, Master would take his disciples from time to time to the movie theater. And we're very fortunate to meet a woman who was a direct disciple of Master. Her name was Peggy Dietz. And she lived in Oregon, in Portland. And she was, in fact, his chauffeur for many years. And she gave wonderful discourses in 1993 when we celebrated the centennial of Master's birth. We had some direct disciples come, both from India and US. And she gave some delightful talks. They're available if you want to see them. But she said that Master would take his disciples from time to time to go see a movie. And she said it was always in the most intense part of it where, oh my God, is the hero really going to make it? Master would tap them on the shoulder and point up, and he said to the beam, just a play of light and shadows, just a play of light and shadows. Once Swamiji did something similar to us. We had gone to a movie with him at a theater, and it was the movie some years ago, Chariots of Fire, about the British athletes who competed in the Olympics. And there's one scene where the one, Harold Abrams was his name, and he'd been training, a very driven fellow, training for years to prove what a great athlete he was. And so he was running in 2 Olympic events. The first one he blew, and the second one, so this is his last chance to prove what a great runner he is. And the director he does it in slow motion, and at that certain point and Swami again tapped us on the shoulder and said, hard to be detached at a moment like this, isn't it? So anyway, all that to say, where I have totally no idea where I got to this, that what we want to do, and then here's where we were. So Master said, so he would point up and he would say, just a beam of light, just a beam of light. And then in one of his writings, he also wrote, I found this recently, he said, once I was at a movie show and I was looking at the light from the beam, and then I looked at the projection booth, and the man showing the movie, the projectionist, I guess is the word, he was sitting there reading a book. And I thought, that's like God. He's so bored, he doesn't even want to watch the show. He's in the watchful state. So anyway, that's knowing truth. We want to know where we're going. We want to know what's behind this show. So let's start with knowing truth. With karma. I'm going to read the shloka and then the rest of the card. This is from chapter 3. Actions performed for selfish gain are karmically binding. Therefore, O son of Kunti, that's Arjuna, perform your duty without attachment in a spirit of self-offering. The explanation, karma is the mechanism by which we learn and evolve. Every thought, word, feeling, and action produces a pulse of energy that is reflected back to us with the same qualities, just as an echo returns a sound to its source. If we project angry or negative energy, we will experience the same directed toward us. If we give out love and friendship, the same will be returned. Gradually, the soul learns to act in accordance with higher universal principles. And we'll do the affirmation later, but I just wanted to also share with you, point out to you the technique. Because how do we use these cards? They're beautiful, they're wonderful. We're trying to make sure everybody got a copy, but they're tools. They're not just something to put on your desk or keep in the packet and tie with a ribbon and, oh, I remember that. But the technique for this is, and we are only doing one homework assignment per gem each day, but when we do the longer course, there will be a homework assignment for each gem. So the technique is, think of an unselfish act that you did for others and the long-term results. Then think of an act based on self-interest and the long-term results. The goal to become aware of the cause and effect nature of our actions and their consequences. It's so important. So if you have time this afternoon, as well as with the psychological chart, you could do that experiment. I was trying it this morning, and it's a little discouraging when, in the sense when you think, wow. It's discouraging in the fact when you see your acts of self-interest, but encouraging when you say, well, it came right back, didn't it? And similarly, any act of kindness, even, and that's the beautiful thing. Acts of kindness don't always, in fact, rarely come back directly. But the beautiful thing is they come back, and they come back indirectly. And I'm looking at one of my dear friends, one of the humble saints of Ananda, Dr. Peter. And whenever I go into the clinic, I always feel cured, not of anything physical necessarily, but of selfishness. Because I watch him serving selflessly, 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 people that most others would ignore and look the other way if they approach them. And yet one feels when Peter enters the room, he's just surrounded by God's blessing because of the karma that he has accrued from his service to others. Okay, we've covered this somewhat. The Gita is, as opposed to just being a book of philosophy, it's a call to action, but not necessarily only outward action, but the action of the devotee. And Krishna reassures him that by fighting with non-attachment, he is not only fulfilling his duty, but he is freeing himself of karma. And that's when we're acting in a way, and we'll touch next on Dharma and right action, but we're acting in a way that duty calls, that frees us from karma. And so we need to move forward even though it seems challenging. And then finally, Kurukshetra is symbolic. It's kshetra really means body. It's the field of the body in Sanskrit. And so it's saying this battle is taking place not only on our physical, but spiritual, our astral and causal bodies. And the thrilling thing of it is, once we break the barrier, the membrane, one might say, of I can change, the resistance of the ego to say, who are you kidding? You'll never be better than you are. Once we begin to break that barrier, even on the physical level, I can get up and do energization every day. Maybe I'll even try doing them twice a day. Once we break through the barrier that says you can't change, then everything starts accelerating. And we start saying, I can change my attitudes. I can change my thought patterns. I can change the way I relate to others. I can change my karma. And so it's a great movement, a unified movement in that way. So, next slide. The law of karma, cause and effect. And this is interesting because in the Gita it says we think of it as personal karma, but it says no, there's global karma, solar system karma. You know, it said that the Milky Way, our galaxy, is actually a Rajasic galaxy, and we're on a Rajasic galaxy. Earth is a Rajasic planet in a Rajasic age. So we have kind of an uphill battle here to break out of Rajas, but we can use Rajas. That's our path. We can use the activating quality to deepen our spiritual efforts and our spiritual life. So karma is anything, any action that moves forward from a coherent whole. So that's why it's not just individual. The ego is the smallest example, but I've never heard anyone talk about it, but maybe even our atoms, the molecules of our body have individual karma. The little maggots have individual karma, the ones that are greedy and the ones that are fighting to get on top. But, so, yeah, we won't talk about that anymore. Let's erase that from our minds. But nevertheless, the law of cause and effect, if it springs from a coherent whole, be it an ego, a family, a nation, a planet, that karma comes back to that source from which it sprang. And so in our past karma, how does it affect us? It resides as little vortices, little whirlpools of energy in the subtle spine. And that's why Master said, and why Kriya Yoga is so powerful spiritually for overcoming karma. But Master said that most people's subtle spine, not their back, not their vertebrae, but the flow of energy in the spine, most people's spines are paralyzed. Meaning they don't know how to move the energy up. It's just sort of, it is what it is. But through yoga practices, Kriya Yoga, we begin saying, oh, I'm beginning to understand how to operate the flow of energy in my subtle spine. And with that, I'm dissolving these little vortices of energy, just like you think of a sluggish, slow-moving river, and there's little whirlpools of debris, of sticks and leaves and all sorts of things, feathers, and they just that's our karmic vortices. But then, let's say water is released from a dam, that's Kriya, and whoosh, it starts flowing powerfully in that spine, and all those little eddies of debris, whoosh, they just get flushed out. And that's what happens that's the mechanism of how spiritual practices help us dissolve our karma. And like the materialistic warriors, the energy of bad karma isn't lost. It's just transmuted into a higher expression. So there's nothing, the process of self-transformation, really, I think one of the biggest enemies is the fear of the unknown. I know who I am now. Maybe I'm not very pleased with it, but at least it's familiar. But then who will I be if I do Kriya every day and for years and I'm free of that karma? I don't know who that person will be. But that's the launching into the unknown and holding the hand of the Guru, saying, Master, I cannot do this by myself. I don't know where I'm going, but you know, and I will follow you. And that's why we need a Guru. Okay, so how do we overcome karma? We've been talking about willpower, that bad karma can be delayed or deferred by the opposite. So let's say, this was interesting. There was a woman who lived here many years ago, a young woman, and her hand, she was a very pretty, sweet young woman, but at a certain point, her hands became crusted with warts, and the doctors didn't know what to do about it. And finally, Swami said, there's an Ayurvedic healer and an astrologer who lived somewhere else in California. Why don't you consult him? And so this woman went. And he said, you were greedy in a past life. You took for yourself. He told her to do two things. Don't eat garlic and dairy, acidic producing. But more important, he said, every day feed the birds. Feed the birds every day. The warts just fell off completely without anything else happening, counteracting the negative karma. So when you're doing your charts and self-analysis, look at points where you say, I always do that, and consciously do the opposite. You're not trapped by that. You can consciously put the energy on the other side of the equation, and it balances the karma. And another very important thing, when bad karma comes, don't let it throw you. Master, remember in, I think it was in one of his talks, I don't think it's in the autobiography, where he said, I asked someone to draw up my astrological chart and look at the most difficult periods that I would have. And in those periods, I will put out more energy and I will accomplish even more. And he said, and I was able to do that. So if when bad karma comes, if you think, oh God, I'll never get out of this, but that's the power of bad karma, because it gets us into the reactive mode. I don't like this. Why is this happening to me? This isn't fair. You know, the devotee should erase from their mental and verbal vocabulary the phrase, this isn't fair. Everything is fair. Everything. You set it into motion, it's coming back. Not one, Christ says, not one hair on your head is not counted. And everything is perfectly in place. Nothing is unfair. So if you, and that's why it says in the Bible, and misunderstood, if someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. It's not saying, oh, okay, hit me again, hit me again. Master interpreted it and explained that, know what it means. If I have bad karma coming to me, let it all come. Come on, let's get this over with. And to take it and say, I will not be deterred by this bad karma. I will not react. I will not be defeated. If you can do that in the midst, that karma will no longer have power over you. So just to realize that it's, when we react and think, oh, this is bad, what's happening, that's the power of bad karma, not the event themselves. Because doesn't the Master tell us circumstances are all neutral? It's how we think about them. So if we think, this is not so bad, I can deal with this, then there's that marvelous scene from the movie The Life of Bernadette, about the beautiful Catholic saint, Saint Bernadette. And she's the one of Lourdes that the Virgin Mary appeared to her many, many times. And healing springs came that are still powerful today. And she didn't live long. She died a young woman, but towards the end of her life, she was in a monastery, a convent, and there was one very bitter old nun. I love the way Hollywood portrays bitter old nuns. I think they shave off their eyebrows, and anyway, whatever they do to make them look really nasty. And so she was jealous of her, and she said, I've sacrificed my life, and I've fasted, and I've lived without this and without that. Why would the Mary appear to you and not to me? And Bernadette said, I don't know. I'm not worthy of it. I don't know why she appeared. And then finally the nun said, if only you could show me that you too had suffered. And she said, well, I haven't suffered. I'm sorry. My life has been relatively easy. And she said, well, maybe I'll show you one thing. And she lifted up her habit, and she had this huge tuberculosis of the bone on her leg, extraordinarily painful. She hadn't said a word about it, because to her it wasn't bad karma. All she knew was that she loved God. So watch how your reaction to karma, the adverse periods in your life, and say, it's not so bad, it's not so bad, and keep moving. And then the ultimate way to overcome karma, dissolve the causative ego through meditation, kriya, everything we've been talking about. Let's go ahead and do the affirmation for karma. So let's do it as Jyotish has been describing. Concentrating at the point between the eyebrows. First do it out loud, normal speaking voice, whisper, silently, and then focus at the point between the eyebrows, trying to bring it deep into super consciousness. As I learn the lessons life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. Silently, As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. Now concentrating deeply at the center of Christ consciousness, superconsciousness, project these thoughts mentally. As I learn the lessons that life teaches me, I grow toward ever greater joy and freedom. I also recommend, as part of your homework for tonight, do the affirmations of the gems that we've talked about today. Okay, so now we're going to move on, and I can see we're not going to be able to cover everything today, but that's okay. We have tomorrow. We'll roll over. Dharma and right action. I'll read the shloka and the explanation. To do one's own duty, even unsuccessfully, is better than to do someone else's duty successfully. It is better to die while trying to accomplish one's own duty than to settle for another's duty. That course is filled with danger and uncertainty. Explanation: Dharma has two meanings, universal righteousness and one's life purpose. Right actions are activities and duties performed in accordance with Dharma. When done without attachment, they lead us toward freedom. So, Dharma is soul force in action. I think if someone could do a count, and I'm not asking anyone to do this, but I think the word Dharma appears more in the Bhagavad Gita than in any other word. It runs through every chapter, through every concept. Swami and Dharma, it's not easily and exactly translated into English. Virtue, truth, Swami called it truth. Where there's Dharma, there is a victory. He said where there is adherence to truth, there is victory. And then, as we say, it's a universal principle, Sanatan Dharma. This was the name, the indigenous name for what came to be known in the West as Hinduism. But that wasn't the name the population of Indians knew their religion, Sanatan Dharma, the eternal religion or eternal righteousness. And Swami used the image once, which I loved. He said, at some point, millions of years in the future, when the earth is just a little burnt out cinder and all the life has moved and taken incarnation on other planets, no matter if this galaxy is destroyed, Sanatan Dharma would exist on the farthest outposts of infinity, because it is the fabric of which God has woven, it's a thread with which God has woven the fabric of creation. The underlying thread of everything is eternal righteousness, truth. And this should be very, very reassuring, because we live in a time right now where it's hard to know what's true. We hear so many opposing and poisonous opinions and viewpoints. And what's real? What's real? Well, this says this says that. I don't know. But if we can just within ourselves try to live in such a way, we talked about karma and the law of cause and effect. Now Dharma is the next step, where we say, oh, I get it. My actions need to be aligned with Dharma, and then I don't accrue karma, because then it's only a reflection of God's will in the world. And so, on one level, the Gita is really just an instruction level, a manual of how to live a dharmic life, how to live in the world and live it dharmically. That's really all it's about. But of course, on the deeper level, to live in the world and live dharmically means to transcend duality and to live in the Dharma of our own soul and the righteousness, the truth of our own being. And that's the final action and the most important one. So, the path of Dharma and right action, Nishkam Karma. Again, that phrase runs through the Gita. Actions without the desire for fruits of actions. This is what right action is. We act without, there's that wonderful story in autobiography where Master's brother is going over the family financial records, and he sees that the Mr. Ghosh, the father, Bhagavati, received a huge amount, was deposited in their account. Something like, I think it was like $30,000 equivalent, which was a huge amount at that time in India. And he said, Father, what? He said, oh, they gave me some bonuses for unpaid overtime. What difference does it make? Why be elated by such things? And so to act in the world without thinking, what am Nishkam Karma? This is the basis of right action. Do your duty without the thought, what am I going to get out of it? Swamiji wrote 150 books, and we were there when he finished most of them. And he would always say, this one's going to be a bestseller. Let's make Visits to Saints a bestseller. But he would always say that. And finally, and none of them ever were. They were read, widely read, highly respected, well received, but to a limited audience because they were on such a high level. And someone asked him once, Swami, do you really think each of your books is going to be a bestseller? And he said, no, but I have to think that way. I'm not caring about what the fruits really are. It doesn't matter. But I have to think this is going to reach so many people. It's going to help so many people. And that's why he wrote them and wrote them and wrote them. And I think in time, as the age advances, people will recognize the gems that he gave us. So action without personal motive results in no binding karma. How to find your Dharma? This is always the big question. How do I know what to do? How do I know what to do? Well, very often, and Swami has said this, if you're not sure, do what's right in front of you. And that's often, you don't have to, if you're an accountant and there's a lot of things on your desk, you don't think, God told me I'm supposed to climb Mount Everest, and here I go. It's very often much more clear, but then likes and dislikes come. I don't want to do this anymore. I'd rather do something else. See how it all ties together? Transcending likes and dislikes, acting in such a way that you're not interested in personal results, and doing what's in front of you, doing your duty, not somebody else's duty. Remember the quote we said, somebody else's duty is fraught with peril. Why? Because their dharma is based on a balancing out of their karma, and ours is similar. And so if I try to do your dharma, my karma is in your karma, and maybe I could be really good at it, but it still won't help me spiritually. And very often our dharma, I hate to say this, but it's things we're not good at. Better to fail at our own dharma than to succeed at someone else's. So to know our own dharma, ask inwardly, ask people you respect, go into meditation, seek the guidance of the wise, and that means try to draw intuitive guidance. And I think we didn't read this, but yes, we didn't. But the technique for tuning into intuitive guidance, Swamiji gives that in his book, in many of his talks, and in the book Intuition for Starters, where he says the spiritual eye is the sending station, like a radio, and the heart center, chakra, is the receiving station. And so when we're trying to draw intuitive guidance, very clearly, get centered, get focused. Bring your thoughts to the superconscious mind, and then project that thought. What is the answer to this question? And then try to feel in your heart an intuitive response. And it's been my experience that one rarely feels it in the moment, but in time, when you're kind of least expecting it, you know what to do. And there's a calmness and a clarity, and because things based on likes and dislikes are born of the rajasic tendency, the activating tendency, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but things based on superconscious perception are calm, clear, unwavering. And so if we want to know the difference between right action and wrong action, test it. How do I feel? Do I feel excited about it, or do I feel calm? Jyotish and I were in a situation at some point where we had to make a very difficult decision involving others, and we prayed deeply about it, and I felt a great calmness, and I knew it was the right way, even though it was not going to be easy. I knew it was the right way to proceed. But if you feel that kind of agitate, oh, that might be fun, that might be exciting, hold off, wait, go slow. But the ability, and then in the Gita it also says so beautifully, Arjuna asked Krishna, why do people follow wrong action, even against their will? Why do they do it? And Krishna says, desire it is, born of the rajasic guna, the activating quality. Activates us and we have desire. And desire, if it's not fulfilled, and it never is to the extent we want it to be, creates frustration. Frustration creates anger. And from that is the loss of discrimination. And the Gita starts, the very first shloka, stanza, is Dhritarashtra, who represents the blind mind or loss of discrimination, is asking Sanjaya, who's one of his ministers, but he represents introspection. He's asking him, what did they on the field of Kurukshetra before the battle starts? And again, Master makes a big explanation about that, because he's not saying what is about to happen, he's saying what did happen. And the battle hasn't started yet. And Sanjaya introspection begins recounting to him. And so when we're looking for, the blind mind doesn't know, but introspection or intuitive perception can guide us and can say, this is the way to go. And each, as we've been saying, each step builds on the last of these 9 gems. And so ultimately, to find the way of Dharma and right action, seek guidance inner guidance from your guru or from people you respect. Meditate, look for a calm, guiding light that moves you forward. And when you feel this is my duty, don't waver, don't hesitate. Pour yourself into it and do it to the best of your ability. Even if you fall flat on your face, it really doesn't matter. As long as we are trying to align the flow of our life force with Dharma and right action, that is the way of the Dharmic warrior. That is the way of the spiritual victor, champion. And we can do this because our efforts are infused with the power of our great guru. And let's conclude this part now. We'll do our affirmation for Dharma and right action. As we've just done, first out loud, normal speaking, whispering, and then bring it to the superconscious mind. I resolve to align my words, thoughts, and deeds with truth. For in Dharma lies victory. I resolve to align my words, thoughts and deeds with truth. For in Dharma lies victory. Whispering, I resolve to align my words, thoughts and deeds with truth. For in Dharma lies victory. Silently, I resolve to align my words, thoughts and deeds with truth. For in Dharma lies victory. Now bringing all that energy to the spiritual eye. Penetrate. Let it infuse your consciousness. I resolve to align my words, thoughts, and deeds with truth. For in Dharma lies victory. Om. Peace. Amen.
I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light, I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy light. I awake in thy love, I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy love. I awake in thy love. I awake in thy love. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy love. I awake in thy joy. I awake in thy joy. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy joy. I awake in thy joy. I awake in thy joy. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy joy. I awake in thy light. I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy light. I am joyful, I am free. I awake in thy light.
Sit upright, relax the body. Let the gaze be slightly elevated. And let's pray together. I bow to the infinite within, without, and all around. Help me to awaken my own highest nature. Let my thoughts, words, and actions lead me to the highest happiness. Let's do alternate breathing as we learned yesterday. So close the right nostril and inhale through the left. Hold. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. And exhale through the left. Now do 2 rounds on your own. As long as the count is equal, it can vary either longer or shorter, but the 3 phases should be equal. When you're done, put your hands down and do 3 rounds of regular breathing. During the holding phase, bring your consciousness to the spiritual eye. Now relax the abdomen, making sure that you're doing all diaphragmatic breathing. Now we'll do a deep relaxation. Inhale and tense the body. Relax completely. Once again. Relax. One more time, inhale and tense. Now do a deep relaxation from the feet to the head, starting with the feet, the calves, knees, feel space, thighs and upper legs. Relax completely. Hips. Abdomen and stomach. Hands and forearms. Upper arms. Shoulders and chest. Neck and throat, relax completely. Chin and tongue. Lips. Cheeks. Eyes and eyelids. And forehead. Now relax the mind. Let go of all thoughts of past and future. Just be very present. Take one deep breath. Exhale. When the breath comes in, mentally chant Hong. As it goes out, mentally chant Saw. Feel the breath high in the nostrils. Continue feeling the breath. If the mind has wandered away, bring it back. The more you can be just an impartial observer, the more your energy will become centered and uplifted. Just observe. Gently bring the mind back whenever it wanders. Now feel your energy becoming concentrated in the forehead. And then expanding out from there. Visualize floating in space, with space all around you, and space within. Let your sense of self expand and expand. Try to feel that the cells of your body are not physical, but made of light. Now, just as we chanted, I awake in thy light, in thy love, in thy joy, choose one of these three and feel that your whole consciousness is infused with that one. Your self-identity is not as a physical being or personality, but you are this infinite quality that has no beginning and no end. Now together, let's focus on the quality of love. Feel yourself as a boundless, vibrating, joyful sense of love that embraces everything. For everything you want only the best, only the highest. Focus that love on your family and friends. Think of them individually and fill them with love. Bring to mind anyone you know who needs healing energy. Let that love infuse them and heal them on all levels. Wherever there is discord in your personal life with any other person, let that love infuse that person and situation, healing it. Let the love now expand beyond the personal to the whole area around. The whole of the state and nation that you're in. Let that love surround the earth like a beautiful aura all around the planet. Let that love infuse everything, uplifting, taking away all pain and suffering, all shadow, all darkness. Now take a deep breath. Come back to your body. Become very aware of your body, your posture, the various parts of your body. Be very aware of the people next to you, of the room that you're in. And make a mental determination to continue to bring this vibration of love into everything that you will be doing, and let it touch everyone that you will relate to. Let that love go especially to two of our friends who are struggling now in Italy. Ramanand, who many of you don't know, and Nandini, who many of you do. He's had a very serious operation and is recovering. Let that love infuse them and heal them on all levels. And now bow to the light, the love and the joy that is within you and all around you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, thank you all. Please be good boys and girls and do your homework. And we'll see you tomorrow.